Please be seated. Madam Rector Elżbieta Rządynska will now address the Assembly.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is really a great honor for the University of Łódź to be hosting a meeting where values and discussion about them are the main focus. At the same time, I feel that our university is the right place to celebrate values, which are a reliable moral compass in a dynamically changing and challenging world. In 2021, we adopted the University of Łódź strategy for 2021-2030 and introduced a new set of values, but still the same: courage, curiosity, commitment, collaboration, and respect. I would like to thank all the distinguished guests for their commitment to developing the value of the academic community. I believe that our collective efforts contribute to building strong, modern universities true to their vocation and prepared for the future. Thank you.
The magnificent rector of the Alma Mater Studiorum, University of Bologna, Giovanni Molleri, will now address the gathering.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and guests, it is a great pleasure and responsibility that I stand before you today as a rector of the University of Bologna. I extended a warm welcome to this distinguished gathering. It is a significant moment in the academic calendar and remarks the enduring commitment of the university worldwide to the principles and values of the Magna Charta. This year's conference holds particular significance as it takes place in Łódź, Poland, under the theme University and Reconstruction of Cities, the Role of Research and Education. The Magna Charta Universitatum, founded by the University of Bologna together with EUA in 1988 and revised in 2020 to reflect the evolving landscape of higher education, continues to guide and inspire our collective mission as universities. It has grown into a global alliance with over 950 rectors and institutions embracing its principles. One of the key messages of the Magna Charta is that universities have a responsibility to engage with and respond to the aspirations and challenges of the world, especially in critical times. In this moment, extraordinary problems such as conflicts, international instability, the pandemic, climate change, floods and migrations, the Magna Charta principle should drive the designing and the implementation of extraordinary solutions. This approach is not just meant for theoretical academic reflection, but it must impact societies in a positive way. Our active and practical engagement should be part and parcel of the daily activity of academic communities who are here in the spirit of Magna Charta. The theme of our conference emphasizes the crucial roles that both research and education play in the revitalization of cities, closing the gap between knowledge creation and knowledge dissemination. Our university must embrace their civic role and responsibilities, and this conference provides a platform for us to delve deeply into this issue. Yesterday's talks clearly showed that we are all called to address the same challenges, but we do so from different cultural, social, and historical perspectives. The range of such perspectives in the Magna Charta universities provides us all with a great tool to better address local and global challenges, making academic values living values. This conference is a melting pot of ideas, a hub of cultural exchange and understanding, where we forge new pathways to face the challenges that lie ahead. We gather here with a common purpose to fortify our universities, capabilities to uphold fundamental values that serve the greater good of our students, society, and the communities we are part of, contributing also to shape their future. The University of Bologna, like many institutions represented here, is deeply committed to academic freedom, institutional autonomy, and social engagement. It has been proudly hosting the Magna Charta Observatory since its very creation, supporting its work both in spirit and through financial contributions. Our commitment to the Magna Charta is constant and continuous. It runs deep in our institutional DNA, and it is utterly consistent with our daily practice. It is in this spirit that I am glad to be addressing you today. May Signing University keep on working together, supporting and trusting each other in the promotion of shared values in a constant and constructive dialogue with each other. Let me close by deeply thanking Łódź University, its rector, the Polish rectors, and the Polish academic communities for hosting us here and for generous support to colleagues and students in current critical times. Let me welcome to the Magna Charta Observatory all the new institutions signing today, joining and widening our community. May you join reflection be both enlightening and transformative for university and for the global context. Thank you very much.
We now welcome Herman Van Rompuy, former President of the European Council, to the podium and invite him to deliver his address entitled Europe at a Crossroads, also a challenge for our universities.
Madam Rector of the great University of Łódź, dear rectors, professors, students, ladies and gentlemen. I became an honorary doctor of this university during the Corona period. And at the same time, I became an honorary professor of the National University of Kiev. Very symbolic and a great honor. And that's why I'm here today. I will address the topic of this meeting from a more general perspective, but no less relevant. What kind of world do we live in, and what role can and should universities play in it? My first reflection is, I will speak to you about the dangerous world we live in, but also about hopeful developments. The current geopolitical developments are dangerous because for the past 18 months, there have been regular threats about the use of nuclear weapons. Climate disasters affect all countries of the world, both by water and by fire. These evolutions are new. We can no longer say with false wisdom, nothing new under the sun. Uncertainty in general has been heightened since the 2008 financial crisis by a succession of events that went by the collective name of permanent crisis, the so-called perma-crisis. After 2008, the Eurozone came under threat, followed by an economic recession. Then there were the refugee influx of 2015, 2016, the terrorist attacks in the same period, the pandemic that dragged on for 3 years, the invasion of Ukraine, high inflation fueled by looming energy shortages, climate disasters, the Israeli-Hamas war, and so on. Each time, the causes were different. For the European Union countries, they were external, except for the crisis of the Eurozone. Some crises were merely problematic, others were existential. They were about life and death of people, such as in the COVID period or in wars. They were existential also, affecting economic pillars, such as banks and the currency. Many of our fellow citizens are now asking the question, what is the next crisis? Even though each time we overcame problems through concerted efforts. The speed and volatility of certain developments, including political ones, is also very striking. More than ever, it is easier to predict the past than the future. Everything can turn for the better, but uncertainty will remain. There are also paradoxical evolutions, and let me give you a few examples. Economic globalization is past its peak. That's obvious. But the globalization of the internet, of music, of film, sport, tourism, climate change, and migration continue unabated. It's really a paradox. In this sense, the world is becoming a village. And within economic globalization, it is not always about free markets or economic rationality anymore. Trade and investment are now hampered by a new political priority for security. The war, or the wars, have an impact on the world order beyond Ukraine and even now beyond Gaza in many ways. I give you a striking example. We are witnessing a growing fragmentation of the global economy into competing blocs. The World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and the European Central Bank have given the same warning shot, a fragmentation in competing blocs. All major multilateral institutions function with difficulty or sometimes no longer. Think again of the WTO or of the United Nations. The major COP conferences on climate change were an exception. But the last COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh indicated the waning trend. The question is whether the mistrust between global actors can still be overcome in the future when it comes to climate change. After all, nowhere is the multilateral framework more needed than for the climate. It should transcend the rivalries in the world. Another paradox. Have we re-entered the Cold War, although no longer on ideological grounds as it was then, but now motivated simply by power politics, by nationalism? Some say it is not the case, but at least that former Cold War was not a hot war like today. Again, a paradox. And my list of those paradoxes is long. The EU went through major crises, but became out of them strengthened simply because for an increasing number of problems, national solutions are no longer sufficient. Europe is needed. It is the Europe of necessity. Many national democracies are struggling internally because of the fragmentation of the political landscape, which makes governing today much more difficult than in my time. But those weakened national governments do nevertheless often reach unanimous decisions in the European Council. The European Council did act quickly after Brexit and after the Russian invasion. The EU can act in times of crisis, but I have to admit, less well outside times of crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine is a game-changing country for Europe and for the West, and for the world, for better and for worse, depending on the war's outcome. Ukraine's integration into the European Union and NATO someday would constitute a power shift that could rival the fall of the Berlin Wall and German reunification. People say democracies are in crisis, but plenty of autocracies are equally so, or are about to be. The G7 was considered irrelevant a few years back, but is now proving to be a cohesive bloc. So is NATO, which is now welcoming new members who a few years ago did not even think of ever joining. The BRICS countries are also expanding, but it's not built on shared values. This is not an assessment, it's simply an observation. With a possible new US administration after 2024, those shared values may also come under pressure in the G7 and NATO as well. The world is multipolar, but there is also a global bipolar systemic rivalry between two global actors in the economic and military spheres. It will not disappear rapidly. In the United States Parliament, in the Congress, there is bipartisan support on anti-China policy. That too is an observation. I know comparisons sometimes fall short, but within the EU there is a rather shift from the bipolar Franco-German axis to more multipolarity. The war in Ukraine has given a stronger voice to a number of Central and Eastern European countries. The internally difficult political situation in the two largest economies of the EU has reduced their political impact on the 25 other member states. All this, ladies and gentlemen, is difficult. All this makes it difficult to paint a coherent picture of the world we live in. Everything flows. Pantare, said the ancient Greeks. It is more true than ever. But despite everything, we must not resign ourselves too fatalistically to the current, rather gloomy reality. We can change things. Danger and fear shouldn't paralyze us. This is not the case today, by the way. We still live in very vital societies and vital economies. The digital revolution is the most telling example of it. It is also changing people themselves and their way of life. The technological revolution shows that we do not just undergo history, but make it, and shows that we are not experiencing the so-called end of history. The European Union is also an example of how history can be changed. Brexit is a one-off, and I don't even know if it is not reversible in the longer term. There is now a queue of countries that are candidate members of the European Union, totaling about 65 million people, as many as the UK today. Dear rectors, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, economic globalization is taking new forms. The three global actors in the world want to be more strategically autonomous, less dependent on each other in domains mainly related to their security. Global distrust has increased enormously. The fear of a repeat of a war, this time outside Europe, in the Taiwan Strait, for instance, weighs on the relations between the major powers because the consequences are incalculable. In history, wars end on the battlefield, not at the negotiating table. Negotiations take place after a war. Look at World War II and World War I. After the end of the war in Ukraine, we need to work on restoring global trust, especially between China, the US, and the EU, knowing very well that the pre-invasion time is not coming back. The EU itself, for whom the war was a total surprise, has become much less naive. We must continue to work for an open world, despite the difficulties. It is a political choice. In democracies, there is a threat of political extremism that struggles with open societies and open economies. Fortunately, despite the growth of populism, no European country is even considering leaving the Union. The example of Brexit acts as a kind of deterrent. Authoritarian regimes often revert to nationalism to preserve internal social cohesion, but nationalism always ultimately leads to protectionism. President François Mitterrand even once said, nationalism equals war. Openness without naivety of the past leads to peace and to prosperity. A fourth series of reflections. On the economic front, structural changes are also occurring as a result of the war and also COVID. The rise in energy prices also changed the competitive relations between countries, including within the G7. The EU almost completely abandonment of Russian gas and oil imports in less than 1 year obviously has a cost. After all, part of the EU economy benefited from low Russian gas prices. US energy-consuming companies are taking advantage of the shale revolution of the last 2 decades. Gas prices are still several times higher in the EU than in the US. Similar European companies are now under competitive pressure, and a number of them are relocating or considering it. It's a new stage in the deindustrialization, leading to frustration and to anger. Competitiveness is not just a matter of costs. The European Union is strong in scientific research. The best known is the Horizon Europe program, which is the largest scientific program in the world, converting inventiveness into innovation, converting invention to economic and make it an economic translation is much harder in Europe than in the US. The lack of venture capital in a fragmented financial market is a handicap. The Union lacks big companies in the new technologies. Size matters. Scale matters in this new world. The Magnificent Seven, so-called, technological companies are all American. In general, Europe lags behind Chinese state-owned companies and the American giants. We are also too dependent in chips, batteries, rare earths from other countries and companies. Hard work is being done there by the European institutions. The labor market looks completely different also after COVID. The OECD countries, there is hardly any rise in unemployment despite the economic slowdown. There are labor shortages in almost all sectors. For instance, both low-skilled and higher-skilled in the private sector and the non-profit, such as education and care. The demographic downturn in Europe plays a role. We need migration for economic reasons, but many reject it for societal reasons. Migration will not disappear from our political agenda in the coming decades. The population of sub-Saharan Africa could grow from 1 billion now to 3.4 billion by the end of the century, more than twice as much as India at the time. The list of priorities for policy is changing profoundly. Security and climate now top higher than the traditional economic agenda. The functioning of our institutions is changing accordingly. I explain. The state and politics play a key role here. By the way, COVID showed that without a strong state, we could not ensure the health of the population. That does not have much to do with ideology, but with survival. We cannot combat climate change without legally enshrined European-wide climate objectives, even worldwide climate objectives. Here again, politics play an indispensable role. And the state was already important in the Union anyway, mainly because of the choice of the welfare state. On average, government spending here exceeds 49% of GDP. In the midst of growing inequalities and the aging of the population, this share of public expenditures will not decrease. Climate policy is meeting increasing resistance from citizens and businesses as the price to be paid for it becomes visible. The social is back. The demand for burden sharing is increasing within and between countries, all over the world. The topic is becoming increasingly pressing at the COP conferences on climate change. We have to keep the long term in mind. Those who often accuse politicians of succumbing to short-termism are now pleading more and more loudly for short-termism. Another paradox. So democratic governments face difficult choices at a time when they are weak because voters are volatile and pulling away from traditional parties. Never in the Union have there been so many minority and multi-party coalition governments in the member states. As mentioned, the EU dimension has become inevitable. I know how difficult in an age of social media it is, but more than ever, political courage is needed. However, responsibility must be taken in civil society as well. Ladies and gentlemen, reflecting on priorities, I cannot help but quote Thomas Friedman, the well-known New York Times columnist. I'm quoting him. At a time when climate change, famine, health crisis, and so much more are stressing planet Earth, the last thing humanity needed was to divert so much attention, collaborative energy, money, and lives to respond to Putin's war to make Ukraine a Russian colony again. End of the quotation. Dear rectors, universities have a big role to play in the revitalization of our society, in economic innovation, in moral rebuilding, in strengthening democratic consciousness. Revolutions begin with pen and ink, and the same is true for evolutions. The philosophy that best responds to this is what is called personalism, in which, by the way, members of all beliefs, all faiths and philosophies can find themselves. It is an open-minded movement that contributed greatly to the resurgence in Western Europe after 1945 and had a huge impact on policies. For the personalists, the human being, the person is an end in itself. He or she is not important for functional reasons, money, ideology, voters, clients, viewers, listeners, etc. On top of this uniqueness of each human being, on top of this, I'm quoting John Donne, the famous poet of the 17th century. No man is an island, entire on itself. He is part of the main. A person cannot live in splendid isolation. We need communities. Personalism is the philosophy of democracy. All men and women are equal in the ballot box and beyond the ballot box. Therefore, also we need the rule of law. Magna Charta was issued in June 1215 and was the first document to put into writing the principle that the king and its government was not above the law. It sought to prevent the king from exploiting his power and placed limits of royal authority by establishing law as a power in itself. This approach is still valid today, even in the European Union. An absolute majority shouldn't mean absolute power. Since every human being counts, the social market economy is also completely in line with personalism. The mix of responsibility and solidarity is typical of this approach to society. We have to find a balance between the market, social consultation, and government. Personalism leads to an interplay of the social, the ecological, and economic in a narrow sense. It implies a balance between the global, European, and the local, between the protection of freedoms and the need for security, between individuality and openness when it comes to multiculturalism, between the individual and the various layers of communities in a society, between generosity and stability when we speak about migration. This search for balance responds to the desire of most people for harmony, for justice and progress. And that's why personalism is the opposite of polarization and enemy thinking. Compromise is not a dirty word, but a necessity in any form of human coexistence. Moderation is not a dirty word, It's the opposite of extremism. A personalist does not start from man as he or she should be, or from an abstraction as the Homo economicus, but from man as he or she is, embedded in different kinds of communities, starting with the family. From there, policies inspired by personalism tries to improve people and society, to make them better. In Latin, to make them melior. This approach is called meliorism. It is the opposite of extremism or nationalism that puts the rights of the nation above those of the individual or of the supranational. Personalism does not mean centrism, standing between opposing ideologies, but it seeks a transcending synthesis between different facets in human beings themselves and in relations between people. We accept the complexity of people and societies, and this is precisely why we do not accept the simplism of populism. This form of humanism should be topical in a crisis of democracy that we experience at all levels of power. It's a complex phenomenon that in a highly individualized civilization, a large part of those individuals feel they do not count enough, and so they lose their belief in democracy. A real paradox. That mindset creates a lot of mistrust toward governments, towards other fellow citizens, immigrants and natives. And social media have reinforced these tendencies, sometimes exponentially, by destabilizing people through lies, fake news and fear. In order to combat mistrust, greater importance should be attached to the restoration of listening, participation, bottom-up, dialogue, conversation, moderation. Democracy is a conversation. When there is or is no longer conversation, there is also no democracy. We have to be very careful of this. The anti-democrat is afraid of debate. He can only scold or frighten. Against openness of mind and heart, against what inspires people, the populist places only emotions, negative emotions. Those have nothing to do with the heart, but with the stomach. Positive values make us more human. This ethical approach underpins our educational institutions at their best. We need knowledge, of course, but we equally need heart and soul. Only value-based societies can also progress in a sustainable economic, social, and environmental way. The fall of the Soviet Union proved this. It will not be the last fall of dictatorship in the future. Rebuilding a country cannot be based purely on self-interest or enemy thinking. Nothing great can be built on small feelings. We need something that transcends us. In this global war on values lies an irreplaceable role of universities in the critical times we live in. Personalism sees human beings as the center of concentric circles around them. The closer to humans, the more humane a society is. And this is also why cities are so important, even more than nations. Within cities, even in smaller and medium-sized ones, communities tailored to people should be encouraged. The city of man. Universities should be experts in humanity. Those cities should make people stronger, willing to also to resist when humanity and democracy are threatened, when individualization divides and fragments instead of bonds. City air makes free was already said in the Middle Ages, but free also from fear, from loneliness, free from poverty, free from isolation, free from negative terror of social media, free from open or hidden manipulation, but free for togetherness, free for a better life, free for hope, so that hope of President Lincoln comes true. And I'm quoting the famous Gettysburg speech, that this nation shall have a new world of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, dear rectors, much is at stake in our countries and in the world at war. Intellectuals and universities have once more a big role to play. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Herman Van Rompuy, for the broad and rich context which you have set out for us this morning, in which we exercise our responsibilities to society. Thank you. We have now reached the point in our ceremony when the Magna Charta Universitatum will be signed. Madam Rector of the University of Łódź, the magnificent Rector of the Almata Studorium, University of Bologna, and the President of the Governing Council of the Magna Charta Observatory will welcome the new signatories of the Magna Charta. I shall now call them to the stage in groups of 9. The Universitat Catholica de Salta, University de Sucre, Marasak University, Budapest Business University, Szent István University, the University of Pécs, Oslo Metropolitan University, AGH University of Krakow, and Collegium Civitas. the Medical University of Łódź, Humanitas University, Jan de Gough University of Kasachała, Łódź University of Technology, Maria Gorzodzka University, the Medical University of Rivostok, Politechnica Kościuszko-Inskra, Poznań University of Economics and Business, and Poznań University of Technology. SWPS University, the Medical University of Silesia, the University of Gdansk, the University of Łomża and Missouri in Olsztyn, Wrocław University of Economics and Business, Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences, Matthew Bell University in Gdańska, Bydgoszcz, the University of the Basque Country, and the University of Alicante. Siam University. Estinfia University. Lokman Hakim University. Kiriv Ri State Pedagogical University. National Technical University of Kharkiv Polytechnic Institute. Pavio Tekina Amran State Pedagogical University. Nottingham Trent University. Royal Holloway University of London. I now invite Marja Dziukowski, Rector of the Poznań University of Economics and Business in Poland, to address the gathering on behalf of the new signatories.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to speak on behalf of the signatories from 34 universities in 12 countries on 3 continents. I'd like to thank the Magna Charta Observatory for protecting and promoting the fundamental values and university rights established in the Magna Charta. Thank you also for organizing this magnificent ceremony. I'd like to thank also our great host, University of Łódź. Thank you. By signing the Magna Charta, we have reaffirmed our strong commitment to principles, values, and responsibilities stated in the Declaration. We have acknowledged our responsibilities to strengthen the role of universities in saving our planet and promoting health and well-being around the world. We declare our solidarity with people on all continents, with universities promoting democracy and freedom. It is our joint responsibility of the whole world academic community to stand for those basic values, to contribute to a better world. I am proud that this ceremony is taking place in Poland, a country which has gone in recent 3 decades through an extremely successful economic, political, and societal transformation. Polish universities have contributed to this success to a large extent through their research and education, proving for the fulfillment of their role in society, their impact on economy, on political and social life. The city of Łódź is a perfect example of the deep transformation of Poland, led by universities. Let me express our strong belief that a similarly successful transformation will be experienced by our Ukrainian friends after their victory in the war started by Russia. Ukraine is fighting also for us, showing a deep commitment to our common values, paying the highest price for this commitment. It is our responsibility to support Ukraine, both now and during the reconstruction after the war. Ladies and gentlemen, our meeting is taking place in Poland. 10 days ago, in the parliamentary elections in Poland, the clear majority of Polish voters, including a very high percentage of the youngest cohort, also our students of Polish universities, have clearly demonstrated their deep commitment to the same basic values: democracy, openness, respect to other people, truth. Let it be a positive and optimistic signal for the months, for the years to come, for all of us. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
The Magna Charta Observatory has welcomed students as members of its governing body over many years. It has worked closely with student organizations, both in the organization of its anniversaries and generally. Student leaders are playing a valuable role in the Magna Charta Observatory's Living Values work. In March this year, the Magna Charta Observatory's Governing Council considered and approved a request from the Global Student Forum to enter into a formal memorandum of understanding to showcase their commitment and shared values and outline collective strategic priorities in terms of advocacy in the years ahead. I now invite Sebastian Berger, Executive Director of the Global Student Forum, to come forward to sign the agreement, and I invite Peter Kwasi-Koji and Martina Damanin, student members of the Governing Council, to come forward to witness the signing. You stay here. Right. Would you like to sit? Yeah. I invite Sebastian Berger to address the Assembly.
Dear Secretary General, dear Mr. President, Madam Rector of the University of Lodz, Magnificent Rector of the University of Bologna, Excellencies, on behalf of the 200 national and regional student unions from 127 countries that are united within the Global Student Forum, let me express our sincere gratitude to the Magna Charta Observatory Governing Council for the ongoing partnership, but also the trust and recognition you are placing in the student movement by formalizing this relationship with our worldwide federation. It means a lot to myself, the global leadership of our organization, our members, and ultimately student representatives that are working at all levels across the globe. We are excited to further deepen our ongoing cooperation and develop new joint initiatives, projects, and campaigns focused on translating our shared values into practice through capacity building, leadership development, and the promotion of meaningful and democratic student engagement within higher education governance and policy making. Especially in times of shrinking civil spaces, in light of rising extremism and authoritarian power grabs wherever we look nowadays, it's more crucial than ever that students, academic staff, leadership, administration, the entire academic community stands firmly behind freedom of expression, institutional autonomy, and academic freedom. We are united in these values and proud to take this alliance to a new level. So thank you so much for this milestone, also for the privilege for us to attend this conference and for the kind hospitality of our hosts here in Lodz. Dziękuję.
This year, for the first time, the Magna Charta Observatory organized an essay competition for students. The title given was, "How might students exercise more influence in enabling their universities to make a more effective contribution to society?" 97 entries were received from students in 24 different countries. The 5 winning students are with us at this ceremony. They have taken part in our conference and have read and discussed their essays as part of a webinar which was broadcast from this building yesterday afternoon. We would now like to recognize their success by presenting them with a certificate, and I will now invite them to come to the stage all together. Ernest Fabri, University of Bologna, Italy. Ernest. Pamela Air Victoria Lira, University of the Philippines. Payson Paysol, Wrocław University of Environmental and Life Sciences of Poland. Diana Stefanova, Pavlo Trikia, Uman State Pedagogical University from Ukraine. And Christina Williams, Norman Manley Law School of Jamaica. Yes, call them away. So, Ernest, would you like to come forward first? Pamela? Payson? Diana? And Christina? Would you like to stay? Organising the essay competition was a considerable task, not least for the members of the judging panel, who each had to read and grade 40 essays in excess of 80,000 words. That's about a PhD thesis, I think. The Magna Charta Observatory would now like to express its appreciation of the judges by presenting them with a certificate. So, Christina Demara, would you like to come up? Peter Quasi-Koja, would you like to come up? Marcel Noble, would you like to join the stage as well? There are 2 judges who unfortunately are not able to be in the room with us today. I believe they may be watching us online. They are Caroline Sundberg and Catherine Stimpson. Dr. Patrick Dean, President of the Governing Council of the Magna Charta Observatory, will now address the gathering.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, everyone, for a very moving ceremony today. I have a few closing remarks to make, but want to begin by thanking our host, Madam Rector, and the University of Łódź for a really extraordinary couple of days spent here at the university. It has been a pleasure for us all, and we've felt very, very well welcomed and supported. It's hard to know what to say, and in a way, it is appropriate that the anniversary conference ends with a ceremony, ends with ritual. It's a tribute, I think, to the wisdom of the founders of the Magna Charta, the authors of the original document of 1988, that they saw fit on an annual basis to commemorate that declaration of belief in these principles that underlie universities. But also in a way that it has been customary for these meetings, these anniversary meetings, to culminate in a signing ceremony of this sort, in which the essence is actually not so much in word as it is in gesture. What has struck me ever since I began my involvement with the Magna Carta Observatory is what an extraordinary testimony it is to the way in which the values of universities cross cultural, linguistic, and national boundaries, that they prevail in circumstances, cultural and political, which are dramatically different wherever you go around the world. And yet, at a ceremony of this sort, we come together and to celebrate these values, which in differing degrees are extraordinarily difficult to uphold, depending on where we do our work as academics. But the ceremony does testify to a broad consensus about the value of this work, and as I'm always keen to stress, the nobility of the mission. I commented, I think, yesterday about a question raised at last year's conference about whether the greater the degree of education in society, the less likely are wars. I would love to think that is true. But I think we all do believe that the values that universities stand for and the notion that increasing understanding, truth, and collaboration around the world is the key to addressing the kinds of challenges we face and that our guest speaker today enumerated for us so eloquently. These are challenging times, and it is a great consolation to be here with you all 34 new signatories, joining whatever it is, 900 and some already having signed the 1988 document and the 2020 document, in recognizing the essential values on which universities are built and on which they have to depend in order to do their work, both constructive and reconstructive, both urban and social and human around the world. So thank you everyone for joining us for these couple of days, and especially for this wonderful conclusion to the ceremony. Thank you very much.
Elizabeta Rządynska, Rector of the University of Łódź, will now make the closing remarks and introduce the performance of the choir.
Ladies and gentlemen, rectors, distinguished guests, 34 higher education institutions have just subscribed or resubscribed the Magna Carta values, deeming them suitable to their respective models of governance and strategies. Perhaps many of them had another reason for doing so. University of Łódź certainly did. That reason is the versatility of these values. Magna Carta may be a code of professional conduct for universities, but it is just as well a set of guidelines that academics work and live by, which helps us all overcome crises such as the ones that we discussed during this conference. I wish you to thank the entire Magna Charta Observatory, in particular Patrick, David, and Carla, and of course His Magnificence Rector of Bologna University, and our distinguished guests, also Dr. Honoris Causa of the University of Łódź, Professor Van Rompuy. Thank you very much. I thank all the participants who traveled here to Poland, traveled here to Łódź, often from other continents, to discuss challenges and beliefs that all universities share. I thank authorities, public figures, diplomats, rectors, and presidents for taking the time to be for these 3 days with us. Last but not least, may I thank those who tend to remain in the background on such occasions, but whose role is just as pivotal as ours, my administrative staff. Administrative staff who worked very, very hard for months to make this event a reality. International Hub, Communications and PR Center, and everyone else who helped out. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite you to short performance of our hall of the University of Łódź. Thank you.
Dam ci ptasza, jakich mało.
May I thank the wonderful choir for bringing our ceremony to such a beautiful and moving close. Thank you very much. The procession, led by our beadle, followed by Madam Rector, Magnificent Rector of Bologna, President of the Governing Council of the Magna Charta Observatory, the Vice-Rectors of the University of Łódź, and the universities that have signed the Magna Charta will now leave the hall, and could we please stand as they do so. Thank you all very much indeed for participating in this ceremony.